My name is Evelyn Hart. I'm 36 years old. On my birthday, I sent one message to my family group chat. Just one. Nothing dramatic, nothing manipulative. Just a simple line saying I was feeling a little sad that no one had remembered. 17 minutes later, my mother replied, "We need some time without you in our lives. Please don't message again." And then my younger brother, Lucas, reacted to her message with a heart. A heart. That was it. No happy birthday, no explanation, no apology. Just my mother telling me to disappear, and my brother endorsing it with one tap of his thumb. So I blocked them both. And then I did something else. Something they never saw coming. I opened my laptop, logged into the family estate account, and I cut off every dollar they had been living on for the past 6 years and 5 months, because here's the part they never cared enough to ask about. The money they called family money. The money they thought just showed up every month like rain. The money paying my mother's bills and my brother's lifestyle. Every single transfer required one. Approval. Mine. The next morning I woke up to more than 70 missed calls, but by then, it was already done. And this time, the person they tried to erase was the same person who had been keeping the whole structure standing. Before I tell you how it all unraveled, take a second to like the video and subscribe if you enjoy stories about family betrayal, hidden power, and the moment people finally stop letting themselves be used. And while you're listening, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I always love seeing how far these stories travel. Now let me take you back to September 18th, 2025. Asheville, North Carolina. Thursday morning. My birthday. The day things finally broke. And the day I finally stopped pretending they weren't already broken. I woke up at 6 to 10 to the sound of my alarm and the pale blue light coming through the kitchen blinds. My apartment was quiet. The kind of quiet that presses against you when you live alone long enough to recognize every sound your place makes. The refrigerator humming, pipes ticking softly, coffee machine warming up. I stood in my kitchen in bare feet, waiting for the first cup to drip, and I remember checking my phone before I even brushed my teeth. Nothing. No texts, no missed calls. No notifications except a pharmacy reminder and an email from a tenant asking when someone could fix the gutter at one of the Maple Ridge cabins. I told myself it was early. People had jobs. People were busy. People forget the exact hour. But I also knew my family. If Lucas had something going on, my mother would have been texting by 6:30. If Lucas had a mild cold, there'd be 3 messages before sunrise asking if he needed soup. If Lucas posted a picture in a new jacket, Patricia Hart would somehow materialize underneath it, with heart emojis and handsome boy comments before most people had their first coffee. So yes, when I saw nothing on my screen, I noticed. I noticed right away. I got dressed, drove across town, and unlocked the office for Monroe Asset House at 7:40. That was the company my grandfather, Arthur Monroe, built from the ground up. Not some giant empire, not old money with marble staircases and private jets. Just smart property decisions, decades of work, and a man who understood what consistent effort could build if you didn't waste it trying to impress other people. By the time he died in the spring of 2019, he had left behind 3 rental cabins outside Asheville, 2 retail storefronts on a decent block, and a small office building with long-term tenants. Enough to create reliable income. Enough to support the family if managed carefully. Enough to be a blessing or a curse, depending on who had control of it. And control was the detail no one liked to mention, not because it was secret in the legal sense. The paperwork was clear. The authority was documented. The estate management structure named 1 operating director and 1 financial approver, me. Arthur didn't give that role to my mother because he knew exactly how she handled money. Emotion first, pride second, reality somewhere much later. He didn't give it to Lucas because by 31, my brother still treated money like something that appeared when he wanted it badly enough. He gave it to me because I was steady. Because I knew what numbers meant. Because I would do the unglamorous things, negotiate repairs, review leases, question expenses, say no when a yes would be easier. A few weeks before he died, he sat with me on the screened porch behind his house, a blanket over his knees, his hands already thinner than I'd ever seen them, and he said, "You can help family, Evelyn, but don't turn yourself into the floor they all stand on." At the time, I thought I understood him. I didn't. Not really. Not until years later. Not until my own birthday. All day long, I kept checking my phone between maintenance calls and spreadsheet reviews. Still nothing from my mother. Nothing from Lucas. Around lunchtime, my friend Naomi Pierce called and sang a badly off-key version of Happy Birthday into the phone just to make me laugh. Naomi had that gift. She always knew when I needed to laugh, even when I was trying not to need anything. I thanked her, laughed, told her she sounded like a dying trumpet, and for a few minutes I felt normal, seen. But when the call ended, the silence from my actual family got louder again. And here's what made it worse. 3 days earlier, Lucas had posted pictures from a fitting for his upcoming reception party with Jenna Cole, the woman he was supposed to marry that winter. Navy suit, champagne in hand, smug grin. The comments under that post looked like a parade. My mother wrote 5 separate ones. "So proud of you, my beautiful son. You deserve every happiness. Can't wait for the big night. Mama loves you. I know because I saw them. I wish I could tell you I didn't care." I did. I cared because indifference hurts more when it happens next to visible affection. It's one thing to forget someone. It's another thing to show them, in real time, that your memory works perfectly well, just not for them. By the time I got home that evening, the sky was turning purple over the ridgeline. I reheated leftover pasta, ate standing at the counter, and finally admitted to myself that the ache in my chest wasn't about one birthday. It was about being the person everyone depended on and no one paused to love out loud. At 8:43, I picked up my phone, opened the family chat, Patricia, Lucas, and me, and typed, "Hey, I know everybody's busy, but today's my birthday, and I'm feeling a little hurt that no one reached out." That was it. No guilt trip, no accusation, just honesty, stripped down to the bone. I hit send. Both of them read it almost immediately. Then nothing. I watched those read receipts sit there under my message like tiny cold eyes. 10 minutes, 15, 17, and then my mother responded, "We need some time without you in our lives. Please don't message again." Underneath that, Lucas reacted with a heart. I read it once, twice, 3 times, slowly. Not because I didn't understand the words, but because some part of me still expected them to become something else if I looked long enough. They didn't. There are moments in life where your body knows before your mind does. I felt the bottom drop out of something inside me. Not dramatic, not even loud, just this deep internal release, like a rope I'd been holding for years finally burned through my hands and snapped. I didn't cry. That surprises people when I tell the story. They expect tears, rage, a breakdown. But what I felt was colder than that, clearer. For the first time in a long time, I stopped translating cruelty into misunderstanding. My mother hadn't lost her temper. She had made a decision. Lucas had made one too. And suddenly, other memories rushed in, one after another, rearranging themselves into a pattern I could no longer pretend not to see. Thanksgiving 2 years earlier, when my mother put Lucas and Jenna at the center of the table and handed me a store-bought card with no note inside. The time Lucas called asking for $8,600 to launch a photography studio with Jenna and got irritated when I asked for a business plan. The afternoon I later discovered most of that money had gone into furniture, a fancy espresso machine, mood lighting, and decorative shelving instead of actual operations. The way he laughed and said, "It's not your money, Ev. Grandpa left it for all of us." The email my mother sent me years ago telling me not to tell anyone I handled the estate because people will think I can't take care of my own family. Back then I thought she was trying to protect her dignity. That night, staring at the family chat on my birthday, I finally understood. She wasn't protecting dignity. She was protecting image. She wanted the credit and none of the truth. She wanted the money to keep flowing and my name to stay invisible behind it. At 9:02, I blocked both of them. At 9:10, I called Naomi. She answered on the second ring. I told her exactly what happened. I even read the messages out loud. She was quiet for a beat, and then she said, "Evelyn, they told you to disappear, and they're living on money you approve. Do you hear how insane that is? There are sentences that hit you harder because they contain no drama at all. Just structure, just truth. Do you hear how insane that is?" Yes, I did. Finally, I did. The next call I made was to Warren Pike, the estate attorney who had worked alongside my grandfather for years and stayed on as legal advisor after Arthur died. Warren was not warm in the sentimental sense. He was precise, gray-haired, careful, impossible to rattle. The kind of man who spoke like every word had already passed inspection. I left a message. He called back the next morning at 8:12. I asked him one question. If I suspend all discretionary family distributions from the estate account, am I within my rights? He didn't hesitate. Completely, he said. The structure gives you sole authority over non-essential support payments, housing supplements, personal allowances, lifestyle transfers. Those are all conditional. If you decide to pause them, there's no breach. I remember staring out my office window while he talked, looking at rain moving across the parking lot, and feeling something I hadn't felt around family matters in years. Solid ground. After that call, I logged into the estate portal. Patricia Hart, monthly allocation, $3,850. Lucas Hart, monthly allocation, $2,940. Both recurring. Both approved every month for 6 years and 5 months. 77 consecutive approvals. 77 times I had unlocked that money without thanks, without credit, without acknowledgement. I hovered over the first one, then the second. Then I clicked pause. Once for my mother, once for my brother. Total suspended. $6,790 per month. It took less than a minute. People always ask whether my hands shook. They didn't. I think that's what startled me most. My body had spent so long bracing for conflict that when I finally acted in alignment with myself, it didn't feel violent. It felt quiet, almost clean. The first sign that things had landed on their side came near the end of the month. Patricia noticed first when her account balance didn't shift the way it always did. She called the bank, then the office, then Warren's receptionist, then another number that belonged to one of our accountants. Somewhere in that chain, she heard the sentence that changed the entire story she had been telling herself for years. Those distributions require current authorization from the operating director. Current authorization, not automatic, not entitlement. Authorization. Lucas found out next because his truck payment, his rent top-up, and the final venue installment for his reception were all hanging in midair. When I checked my blocked voicemail folder that night, there were messages from everyone. Patricia, Lucas, Jenna, 2 unknown numbers, a cousin I hadn't heard from in over a year, even a woman from church who had somehow inserted herself into the crisis by the 3rd day. But here's what mattered. Not one message said happy birthday. Not one asked if I was okay. Not one acknowledged the text telling me to stay out of their lives. Every single call was about money. Call me back. There's some issue with the estate transfer. This has to be a mistake. Jenna and I have vendors waiting. Mom's bills are due. You need to fix this. I can't believe you're doing this over one message. Over one message. That's what people call the final crack, when they ignore the weight of everything that came before it. A week after my birthday, my mother came to my apartment at 7 in the morning. I looked through the peephole and saw her standing there in a camel coat. Lips pressed thin, posture rigid. The way she stood when she wanted to arrive, looking like the injured party. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. She started with the usual script. We need to talk. Then the guilt. I'm your mother. Then the revision of history. You know I didn't mean it like that. Then, inevitably, the real point. Turn the money back on. I remember leaning one shoulder against the doorframe, coffee mug still warm in my hand, and saying, "You told me not to contact you. I'm respecting that." Her eyes narrowed. Don't be cruel. Cruel. That word. It's amazing how quickly people discover morality when access disappears. When I didn't move, she said the thing she thought would cut deepest. Your grandfather would be ashamed of you. I looked right at her and said, no. He'd be ashamed I waited this long. She left furious, but not defeated. Patricia never backed away cleanly. She pivoted, reframed, recruited. That was her talent. Lucas came 2 days later with Jenna. They showed up at Monroe Asset House without an appointment, walked straight past reception, and into my office as if urgency gave them permission. Jenna tried soft voice first. Lucas took the direct route. We just need the final payment released, $5,480. The reception is next weekend. I asked whether he had heard himself. He frowned. This is for the event, Ev. Don't make this bigger than it is. Bigger than it is. I almost laughed. Here was my brother standing in front of me, asking me to finance a public celebration for a couple who had watched me be erased from my own birthday and said nothing. I told him no, calmly, clearly, no. He stared at me as though the word itself were offensive. Jenna tried again, saying this was about their future, that families move past things, that surely I didn't want to do this over hurt feelings. Hurt feelings. Another favorite phrase people use when they want to shrink an injury enough to climb over it. I told her this wasn't about hurt feelings. It was about access, entitlement, and the fact that I was no longer willing to bankroll either one. Lucas's face changed then. The polished fiancé mask dropped. You're ruining my life over a text, he snapped. I said, no. I'm letting your life stand on what it actually has under it. He had no answer for that. Just anger, the kind that comes when people can feel power moving away from them and don't know how to stop it. After they left, the public version of the war began. My mother started telling people in Asheville that I was weaponizing the estate, that I had become controlling since taking over operations, that I was punishing my own family because I felt left out. Lucas posted vague stories online about people who use money to manipulate relationships. He didn't name me. He didn't have to. Patricia told women at church that I'd gone cold. A neighbor stopped smiling at me in the grocery store. Someone at the post office looked at me with that careful, sideways curiosity people get when they believe they know half a scandal. And the old version of me, the one who spent years smoothing everything over, might have panicked, might have rushed to explain, might have bled all over the floor trying to prove I wasn't the villain in the story they were circulating. This version of me didn't. I started saving everything instead. Screenshots, dates, voicemails, Lucas's story, my mother's old email. Every small, ugly piece. Not because I planned to sue anybody, because I wanted proof. Proof that I wasn't imagining the pattern. Proof that I had not become cruel. I had become visible. The reception was scheduled for October 4th at the Rowan House, a boutique hotel downtown with exposed brick walls, polished wood floors, hanging lights, and the kind of rented elegance people love for events they want photographed from every angle. 65 guests, signature cocktails, white flowers, gold lettering on place cards. A room arranged to project happiness, stability, and tasteful success. I know all that because Naomi went. She had received an invitation months earlier, back when Lucas and Jenna still saw her as adjacent enough to be useful and distant enough not to be dangerous. She called me from the parking lot before it started and asked if I wanted her to leave. I told her no. Stay, I said. I want someone honest in that room. What Lucas and Patricia didn't know was that 3 weeks earlier, I had already confirmed in writing that the estate would not cover any remaining balance for that event. The final $5,480 had never been approved, never been promised, never been released. And the Rowan House, unlike family, cared about documentation. Naomi told me later that for the first hour, everything looked perfect. Jenna in cream silk, Lucas in a tailored navy jacket, Patricia wearing an expression so composed it might as well have been lacquered on. She floated between tables, greeting guests, smiling for photos, receiving compliments like she had personally engineered all this grace. At one point, she clinked her glass and made a toast about love, resilience, and how the Hart family always stands together. Naomi nearly laughed out loud when she repeated that line to me. Always stands together. That from a woman who had texted her daughter to stop existing in her life 2 weeks earlier. At around 8:15, the event manager approached Patricia and asked if he could speak with her privately. They stepped off toward the side corridor near the bar. Through the doorway, Naomi could see posture but not hear words. Patricia's smile disappeared first, then her shoulders stiffened. Then Lucas, noticing something was wrong, crossed the room toward them. The manager showed them a tablet, probably the invoice, the communication log, the unpaid balance. He explained professionally, quietly, firmly, that the estate account had not authorized the final charge, and without settlement, the remaining premium service package would be halted immediately. There's a difference between private panic and public humiliation. The first can be managed. The second moves faster than language. Lucas lost his temper before Patricia could contain him. He came back into the main room and said, far too loudly, "Evelyn locked everything." Conversations stopped. Glasses froze halfway to mouths. 65 people don't need a microphone when shock does the work for them. Patricia tried to recover. She said there had been a misunderstanding. She said there was an issue with transfers. But the manager, still visible nearby, didn't have the expression of a man standing inside a misunderstanding. He had the expression of a man holding an unpaid contract. And then came the question that cracked the whole thing open. One of Patricia's friends, someone who had clearly been told a different version of family finances for years, said, "Wait, Evelyn handles the estate?" Another guest turned toward Patricia and asked, "I thought you managed all that." Silence. Lucas, already angry, made it worse. "She approves everything," he said. "She always has." There it was. No graceful exit. No room left for spin. In one bitter sentence, my brother exposed the truth my mother had buried for years. I was the one approving everything. I was the one who had been carrying the machinery while Patricia enjoyed the image of being the strong, self-sufficient matriarch, and the room understood it all at once. Naomi said you could feel the air change. Sympathy shifted direction. Curiosity sharpened. A few people looked embarrassed on my behalf, as if they had just realized they'd been applauding the wrong person for 6 years. Patricia, cornered, did what people like her do when the image cracks beyond repair. She tried victimhood. She told the room I was punishing her because she asked for a little space. Not because she had erased me. Not because she had lied about my role. Not because she had taken what I gave and turned me into a ghost behind it. Just because she asked for a little space. But by then, the sentence was too small for what everyone was seeing. Too thin. Too late. One by one, guests started leaving. Quietly at first, then in clusters. Jenna stood near the floral display looking stunned, as if the room she had designed in her mind had been replaced with some harsher version of reality, and she no longer knew where to stand inside it. The premium bar closed. Staff began scaling back service. Smiles turned into apologies. Lucas stopped speaking altogether. The reception did not collapse because I stormed in and exposed them. That's the part I want you to hear clearly. I didn't have to. It collapsed because they built a beautiful evening on top of money they had not earned, gratitude they had never expressed, and a person they had just tried to erase. All I did was stop holding the ceiling up. When Naomi called me later that night, I was on my couch with a blanket over my legs and a mug of tea in my hands. She told me everything. The manager, Lucas shouting, the room going still, Patricia finally unable to control the narrative. I listened in silence. When she finished, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt settled, like a long argument inside me had finally gone quiet. Naomi said, "You didn't do this to them, Ev. You just stopped saving them from what they built." That sentence stayed with me. The following Monday, I met Warren in his office. I told him I didn't want to sever support permanently, not because my mother and brother deserved restoration, but because I wanted the record to show the truth. I was not acting out of revenge. I was restructuring based on necessity, accountability, and the actual purpose of the estate. So we drafted a new distribution framework. Patricia would receive $1,050 per month for basic documented needs only. Lucas would receive $975, same condition. No more discretionary lifestyle transfers, no event funding, no vanity spending, no blank checks disguised as family duty, receipts required, review monthly. Warren sent the notices by certified mail. I also did one more thing. I found the old email from Patricia, the one where she told me not to let anyone know. I ran the estate because people might think she couldn't take care of the family. I forwarded it back to her current address with a single line above it. "You wanted me invisible. This is what that cost." No threat, no rant, just truth, returned to sender. The consequences arrived quickly once Illusion no longer had financial support. My mother traded in her SUV because the payment no longer made sense. She took a part-time job at a veterinary clinic answering phones 3 afternoons a week. According to my Aunt Elise, who eventually became the one relative willing to tell the truth without theater, Patricia complained constantly at first. Her feet hurt. Her back hurt. The schedule was tiring. She hated taking instructions from women younger than her, but she went. That mattered, even if I wasn't ready to reward it. Lucas and Jenna postponed the wedding. Not because of me, despite what he told people. Because stripped of estate support, their numbers no longer worked. The studio never became a real business. The truck became harder to justify. The apartment they were eyeing moved out of reach. Jenna, faced with the boring arithmetic of actual life, began asking different questions. Not, when can we rebook the florist, but how were we planning to pay for any of this? There are questions that expose character faster than accusations ever could. That one did. In late November, we announced the Arthur Monroe Trade Scholarship, funded through the same estate everyone had once treated like a private faucet. $18,000 a year for local students pursuing community college, trade certifications, nursing support training, electrical work, welding, the practical futures my grandfather always respected, because he knew what building a life with your hands looked like. That, more than anything, felt like the right ending to his story. The money that once paid for inflated egos and staged elegance would now help someone build something real. And me? People always ask that too. What happened to me after the dust settled? The honest answer is not some glittering movie version of freedom. It was smaller, better, more solid. Saturday dinners with Naomi and Aunt Elise. Fewer apologies, more sleep. I took a financial planning course at the community college on Tuesday nights because for the first time in years, I was thinking not just about managing inherited systems, but about building my own future beyond their demands. I stopped checking my phone, hoping for tenderness from people whose language had always been dependency. I learned the difference between being needed and being valued. That lesson cost me more than one birthday, but once I learned it, I couldn't unsee it. Months later, sometime in early February, I got a text from an unknown number. "I'm sorry for that day, for all of it. I didn't understand what you were carrying. Lucas." I stared at it for a long time. I didn't answer immediately. I didn't block it either. That mattered too. Not because forgiveness had arrived in some soft, dramatic wave, but because by then my silence belonged to me. It wasn't shock anymore. It wasn't abandonment. It was choice. If you're listening to this and any part of it feels familiar, if you are the one who keeps things running while everyone else enjoys the version of life you make possible, If you are the one remembered only when something breaks, when a bill comes due, when a favor is needed, when a crisis needs your shoulders, hear me carefully. Setting a boundary is not revenge. It only looks like revenge to people who benefited from having none. I did not destroy my family. I stepped out of the place where they had positioned me. Underneath them, unseen, load-bearing, silent. And when I moved, what fell was not love. It was entitlement. That is the real difference. People can need you and still not value you. They can rely on you and still resent you. They can accept your labor, your sacrifice, your steadiness, your money, your emotional endurance, and still behave as though your pain is inconvenient. That was the hardest truth I had to face. Not that my family used me, that I helped them do it by mistaking endurance for love and silence for peace. So if someone tells you they want space, believe them. Give it to them, all of it. And then watch carefully what happens when they realize what they actually lost. Because sometimes the person they thought was easiest to dismiss was the very person holding the whole thing together. If this story hit close to home, tell me in the comments. Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your dignity? And what did you choose? If you stayed with me all the way to the end, thank you. Truly. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out the next story on the channel, because if you've ever been the invisible one in the room, I think that one might stay with you too.